of Mexico had their houses. So thank you for being here, and thank you for joining this day. I'm very happy to have you visiting virtually Tulane School of Architecture. This is a great school, as you know, in a great university and in a great city, New Orleans, an extraordinary city to be embedded in a very intense culture, in a very intense climate, in a very intense architecture, and in a very intense all kinds of cultural scenes, including food and music, etc. Tulane, as you know, is one of the main research universities in the United States and in North America, actually, including Canada, is one of the smallest of them. So it's a university that is very nimble, is very easy to move across, is very easy to take classes in different programs, to mix with other people, and to have a really high level experience, academic experience, as one of these best research universities in the United States. And Tulane School of Architecture is one of the oldest and most prestigious schools of architecture. We have been running for 100+ years, and we have a great set of programs and extraordinary faculty. We are a school that is very committed to really educate great professionals, and we are very well regarded on that, but also to educate great citizens and intellectuals and people who are going to be innovating in the world. That is what we really need now. New Orleans, as you know, and you have been listening to the news, we have just weathered Hurricane Ida, a major hurricane, category 4, almost category 5. If just in the anniversary, 16th anniversary of Katrina, which was a category 3 hurricane, the city and the university has only 2 weeks after that, we were in full speed again. So the city is ready, the university is ready, the school is ready, and we continue doing our teaching and our research, and nothing like Katrina has happened again. So it's an intense place, but we are very ready to enjoy the intensity of this place. The hurricane and many other things are explaining us how important is the built environment, how important architecture is to inhabit the world, and how important is to innovate and to adapt and to change our ways of how we have been doing many things until now. And this is something that the School of Architecture is very committed to. We are designing, we are investigating, we are finding new solutions to how to deal with water, architecture, public space, buildings, how to develop the land in a different way, how we are going to change how the built environment is going to be much more adapted and much more resistant and much more equitable for the people, because we know that the difficulties that climate change are producing to is affecting everyone, but is affecting much more people who have less means. So the environmental equity is a real thing, as well as the health equity, etc. So the School of Architecture, sorry for this plane that is hovering over my head. 1 second. The School of Architecture is really committed to have you educated as great professionals that are really going to change how we are inhabiting the planet. And for that, we have a great set of programs. We have our BARC, our 5 years program in architecture. That is our main program, for which most of you are probably interested. But we have also sustainable real estate, we have design, we have preservation. We are going to add next year landscape architecture and engineering. So we have a school of the built environment in which you, as an architect, will be studying architecture, but will be able to also learn about landscape. We will be also able to learn about other design options or real estate, how the development of the land can be changed. And from the School of Architecture, you will be able to connect with many other areas of study that are really important and essential: issues of environment, issues of social sciences, anthropology, health, and culture, arts, and all kinds of fields that you would be interested and will be educating you as a rounded architect, but also as a rounded citizen and as a rounded intellectual who is going to be developing new ideas that we really need. So thank you again for joining this day with us. I hope very much that you will be enjoying the conversations, presentations, ideas, and the possibility of joining one of the best regarded, most wide-reaching schools of architecture, because we are in New Orleans at Tulane, but our network expands all the country and beyond the country. And well, take your first step in your adult and professional life in the most exciting thing, because I can tell you, as an architect, designing something, getting it built, and seeing people using it is one of the most pleasant and satisfactory things that you can have, that you can see. Really seeing kids playing in your buildings, playing in your public spaces, people using and smiles in those spaces, then you feel like you have done something for human life and for the people. So congratulations for being interested in the most exciting activity and profession that you can imagine, that I really, really love. Thank you and enjoy the day.
Thank you, Dean Iñaki. He's actively representing one thing about our faculty is that they're doers and they're active participants in their field. And so it's not uncommon for a professor to be out in the field working during the school year. So thank you, Dean Iñaki, for that message. I'll now introduce our professor of design, Tiffany Lin. She's going to give us a program overview of our architecture program.
Great, thanks. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me, Michael? Okay, great. I'm going to share screen, actually. And I have some slides for you all. All right. I'm Tiffany Lin. I'm an associate professor of architecture. I've been at Tulane for 12 years now, mainly coordinating foundations, architecture, design studios, and recently directing our new Bachelor of Arts and Design program, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So the School of Architecture, as our dean has said, is at a really vital time. We are growing, we are excited to make change. And our studio culture, I think, is essential to young people in the way that we approach creative problem solving and collaborative thinking. And here's a picture of our typical pinups and critiques where professors are sitting together and team teaching to review work that students have come up with. We are so lucky in that we're situated in New Orleans, and we draw upon the city's culture, history, architecture, and unique geographic location in our studio work. So we see New Orleans as kind of a design lab to test our ideas and speculations in the studio. I'm going to talk a little bit about the different degree paths, because we get a lot of questions about the differences in degrees and what they mean. And if you get nervous at any point, don't, because they're non-committal. And we always say that we are a small school, so we're nimble, we're flexible, and you can kind of curate your path through the school. So the four main...
Tiffany,
yes.
Tiffany, sorry, I don't know if you are showing slides. We only see the first slide.
Oh no, I was showing slides. Sharing has paused. Please, please contact your host. Well, let's see.
I'm not sure why.
Okay, give me 1 second, everyone. It's a little bit odd because I can't see the audience faces.
Probably if you have two screens.
Yes.
It's tricky.
We're experiencing technical difficulties.
Now,
You
Here we
see
go.
now,
screens moving now?
yes, yes, yes,
Okay,
yes, perfect.
great.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
So this was the opening slide, and this was the slide of professors looking at student work, team teaching during the critiques. And our unique city, which I have grown to love, and our degree paths. So we are here. And I was talking about the 4 undergraduate degree paths and how they're all housed under the School of Architecture. And I'll talk about them in detail. And if you all have questions, you can write them in the chats because we get a lot of questions typically about this. The Bachelor of Architecture is the traditional 5-year degree track. It's a professional program, meaning after you complete the 5 years in architecture, you can take your exams and be a licensed architect. And we also have the 4-year Bachelor of Science in Architecture program, which is what we call a pre-professional program. Sometimes in our discipline, we call it a 4+2. So you do your 4 years in undergrad, and you'll have advanced standing in a graduate program. So you would do 2 more years of graduate school in order to be able to take the exams to become a professional architect. And then the Bachelor of Arts in Design is something new that we've cooked up in the past year that's gaining a lot of traction. It is designed to be a double major. So a lot of Tulane students want to explore and have multiple interests. So the Bachelor of Arts in Design uses our faculty and expertise in offering design education for those who are not necessarily interested in becoming an architect or only becoming an architect. And then the Bachelor of Science in Real Estate is also a new-ish program drawing off of our graduate real estate program, in that it can be paired with multiple degrees. A lot of business majors like to dual major in this Bachelor of Real Estate program. And then I'm going to show you some slides that talk about how the research of the faculty really folds into our studio curriculum that we, like Inyaki's on site, we are making, we are doing, and our profession very much informs our research studios in our making. And then some exciting digital fabrication and technology we have growing at the school. And that's really something our new dean has pushed forward in the studio culture. And I'll show you some images from there. So a recap of the degrees, the 5-year degree is kind of our flagship program. It's NAB accredited. NAB stands for National Architecture Accreditation Board, which means you can go be a professional architect afterwards. It is our most robust program. Is that it's 5 years because it's 10 semesters of design studio. And those are the big design courses, which are 6 credits each, leads to licensure. The 4-year program is more flexible, and students who want to become architects typically will do 2 years in graduate school after that. The Bachelor of Arts in Design is the lighter kind of design interest that can be coupled with other degrees, as is the Bachelor of Real Estate. So at a glance, here are our numbers. We have about 250 undergraduate schools students and 100 graduate students in our school. So we're the smallest unit on campus, which makes it great because we know everybody's names, students know the faculty, and there are very few classes that are more than a studio of 12 or a seminar of 15. The big kind of required courses are with your classmates within the same year, so everybody knows each other. And we have a robust connection with our alumni who are practicing architecture in the field. Here are some images from first year studio. So this is fall intro freshman studio and on the first day. So you see there are some professors sprinkled in here, teaching assistants. Each studio of 12 has a teaching assistant. So we have you making and drawing on the first day. There's no answer, there's no failure. We're experimenting, we're taking you into the city. Here on the right, you see students drawing at Audubon Park, which is just across the street from our campus. And that is the site of the first project, which is to design a pavilion in Audubon Park. Students often will pin up their work for discussion. So it's very collaborative and interconnected in that way. Some images of experimentation in first year. So those of you who have any kind of anxiety about, oh, I'm not good at math, oh, I can't draw, I don't know anything about buildings. It's not buildings. It's really in the core of the design studios is creative problem solving and thinking and learning that design can be a process that enriches your life and your ability to kind of be resilient and and deal with complex issues, managing complexity. So here's some analog collage making and some digital collage, experimenting with scales. We're using a chair as a way to understand the size of the human body, and then using that to speculate on form and spaces that are perhaps more abstract. And then we always mix the 2D with the 3D all through the design course. Here are students working in teams to create a chair out of cardboard. And here's a graduate teaching assistant, and we show how to scale up your ideas and make little models first, and then full scale interpretation of that has to that you have to sit in for the review. Here's an example of a pavilion. So it's a little quarter scale model that's put on site at Ottoman Park, and we take pictures of that, and we learn to think about spatial sequences, how you walk, how you work with existing context, shade and shadow and movement. Here's a slide from our sustainable real estate program. Here, a bunch of graduate students and the director of the program there, Cassius Peeler. And there was so much interest in the program that we piloted an undergraduate component, which is very popular now. And these students are visiting local developments. This is a sustainable housing project. So a lot of field trips, learning from actual projects that our faculty are engaged in. And no pressure, but there's no pressure to declare your major until the end of your sophomore year at Tulane. So we very much encourage students to experiment, especially with the courses that we have within the School of Architecture, to take a real estate class or take an urban studies class or a preservation class in order to either decide on a degree track or choose a minor in the program. Some research and practice. Here you see a student kind of sanding down the inside of a tunnel. And I'll show you that project in a second, but design build, I think, is one of our most unique offerings at the school. And research travel. Here, a group of students are visiting Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. They're funded research studios where we go and meet local communities and provide design services. So back to that project, sorry, it's a little out of sequence. Here are students pouring concrete into the tube formwork of that tunnel, which became part of a playground for Hotel Hope, which is a housing for transitional families, and students studying what that might feel like, the scale, the size, the shape of that tunnel, working with nonprofit community partners. So we have real clients, students are engaging in people who need design services. And in one semester, through the Small Center for Collaborative Design, students are designing and building something for the community, which I think is fabulous. They range in scale, these builds. Here is a little apothecary cart for during COVID when we scaled down a little bit, as opposed to our biggest build, which is Grodat Youth Farm in City Park. It's a youth empowerment kind of urban farming campus that is made up of recycled shipping containers. And if you have an opportunity to come to Tulane, you should definitely visit that project. Urban Build is another one of our design build initiatives. You may have heard of this after Katrina, so we're on our 16th house now. Every fall semester, students design a house, a dwelling, a home, one unit in the fall, and then students actually physically build it in the spring semester. And we've done 16 of these houses, and they're award-winning, like the design awards for the AIA, American Institute of Architects, are blind. They're juried blind, and these projects of our students often win these national recognition, which is great. And here, a review happening in the house itself. International programs. So as you heard from our dean, Alday is from Barcelona. So we have really great connections with programs existing in Barcelona, and Tulane has a kind of umbrella international studies office where we encourage our students to travel abroad for at least one semester and kind of support them in their coursework so that when they return, it's continuous. And these are some of the existing programs that our architecture students have traveled to: Copenhagen, Berlin, Prague, Barcelona, Rome, Singapore, Melbourne. I used to teach the Rome program. The virtual exhibition. So we have a really fabulous director of fabrication and digital, all things digital, who moved us online very quickly when the pandemic hit. And we're back in person now, but I wanted to share with you a little bit of our fabrication and technology at the school. We have a suite of laser cutters, 3D printers that produce these models. These are analytical models of a site on Jefferson Island. 3D printers that can kind of 3D scan and print. I think there's an image of that. So really useful in historic preservation when we are scanning existing conditions. And here's our digital fabrication manager, Nick Lacaze. There's a robot, and I think it's in scanning mode. So it's kind of scanning his face, or, you know, for architecture, it'll be topography. For design, it might be a chair or a space or a room, and using that as a basis. We have several drones in our school, which is super useful after Ida to check out how our roofs fared. And we use those for site analysis, site documentation, and also learning from more than just Google Earth, that you're actually in the pilot seat. Here's our CNC mill that kind of 3D routes digital models. Here's an example of a paver from a studio happening right now. The PCI studio is a concrete, Precast Concrete Institute has funded one of our design studios. And they're testing kind of pervious pavers that can happen on parks and roadways. So these are 3D printed, meaning you're not pouring plaster, you're not making it out of sheets. It's kind of made by a robot and printed layers. And the Sukkah, those of you who are celebrating Sukkot, every year the architecture students design and build a Sukkah on campus. And here you see one from 2 years ago. The pieces were 3D modeled and then milled out of pieces of plywood and created this kind of beautiful screen against the backdrop of our student center, and had seating on the inside, and kind of was a really wonderful sculptural piece. So we are engaged in the greater university in that way in projects. We're situated in Richardson Memorial Hall, which is currently undergoing renovations. We're really excited about the new building that we're gonna have. And I wanted to switch, it's weird because I can't see you, but I'm gonna switch gears now to some portfolio tips, which I was asked to present. And we highly encourage you to submit a portfolio of your work with your application. It's not required. It's entirely possible to be admitted to Tulane based on your academics alone. But this extra portfolio piece helps us give you extra scholarships is one big reason. But also, if you are somehow borderline on the admission scale, the portfolio can really tip you over into becoming a part of our school. So I wanted to show you some advice. I guess I've been reviewing these for years, and typically we get somewhere from 500 to 800 portfolios. So we look at them very quickly. So I need you to know that and know some tricks to submitting a portfolio that is effective for this purpose. So some advice: showcase drawings from observations. A lot of times students think that they should show architecture work because they've done some architecture in high school or some summer programs, and by all means you should show some, but not all. We really want to see your mind and your hand at work. So drawings from observations are always great. A range of media to show your skill set. So not all pencil, or not all painting, or not all color, or not all black and white. Document your work. I'm going to show you some examples in a bit of how to just do little things so that you're showing the best version of the work that you've made, because we're looking at it digitally on a screen. Curate your best work, meaning selecting only the best 10 to 12 pieces, not everything, right? Your portfolio is as good as the weakest piece. Clarify design concepts with diagrams and sketches. There'll be a place where you can write about your work, and often we like to see that if it's relevant. So some examples of stellar portfolios that I've seen in the past, and we typically look at your work as a suite like this. So it's important for you to see if your work makes sense together. And I would say this is stellar because there is a wide range of media. Media is what you made the thing with. There's some 3D stuff, there's some 2D stuff, there's charcoal, Conte crayon, watercolor, sculpture. Another high-ranking portfolio, really sophisticated use of color. It's a lot of portraiture, but there's some black and white in there, drawings from observation. And then some examples of maybe not as successful portfolios, in that the subject matter maybe is a little bit childish, but mostly that the work isn't documented well. So I think a big part of how to upload this stuff for us to see is to know how to take a good photograph. Take it in natural light, never at night with incandescent lights, but in natural light, natural sunlight. Make sure there are no shadows in it. Make sure you crop it a little bit. And I'm going to show you an example of how to do that. Here's another suite of works that maybe wasn't as strong as it could be because of, when you take photos of models or drawings in low light, they look kind of yellow like this. And that's something you can correct on your phone, and you should. Maybe too many architectural pieces. A lot of times the architectural pieces show us what your teachers are doing rather than what you are doing. So if you have some of those, definitely complement it with some drawings from observation, meaning you're looking at it and you're recording it with your mind and your hand. I have a little example here of how those two, clearly one is a drawing of the other model, right? That how a little bit of post-production might make your work better. So that yellow can be easily taken out with a program called Photoshop. There's even a Photoshop for your phone. So my critique of this might be that it's oversaturated, not enough contrast in the skewed composition. So if you take it into a program that can help you adjust for contrast and straighten up the photo, or just take a better photo. I think that's always the best advice. Take a better photo, maybe combine something that is 3D with 2D if they are meant to be together, and submit that as one image so that they support each other. So in a way, a little bit of post-production or editing in the computer before you submit can go a long way. And one of the best pieces that I've seen and it shows personality, right? And oftentimes if we're looking at 800 portfolios, I won't click on every one, but if I see something like this, I might click on it to see what the student wrote or what the applicant wrote. And she had written about how she had spilled a cup of coffee and then kind of was inspired by the forms that became this still life drawing. And so that was interesting. So they showed a little bit of personality. It's a strong drawing from observation, high contrast, experimental use of washes described in the text, a nice range of values using bold contrast. I think on a computer screen, always err on the side of more contrast, darks and lights. A few other really strong portfolios, and the strong portfolios will be invited to something we called Preview Day, Portfolio Day, and then we interview with you, have a portfolio review, and there are a number of scholarships given out based on your portfolio. And we invite you to, I know this was really quick, but if you have any questions, please reach out. There are a bunch of us who work with the admissions office, and we can answer your questions.
Hey, Tiffany, we got a couple questions as you were speaking, so I'm just going to, I think they're good for everyone to know. So the first question is, are you able to submit other modes of art like literature or performance videos?
There is, for the main Tulane application, absolutely. There are uploads for videos for that. And for the Dean Scholarship, there is too. So that's something many people don't know about. Tulane gives out 1 to 2 Dean Scholarships per school. So we typically give out 1 or 2 for architecture. And that's a 5-year full ride in tuition. And so that's an extra prompt where you solve a design problem. And a lot of people upload videos for that.
And for the portfolio, would that work? What what's the range of mediums that you can use for the portfolio?
I've never seen a video for the admissions portfolio piece, but I don't see why not. I'm not as familiar with the current Slate interface, if it allows for that, but I would say reach out to Michael Kasana and see if you have a rocket video that you want us to see. I would find a way to get us to see it.
Yeah, we always tell students, submit a portfolio based on your creative potential. So anything that shows your creative potential, if that is a poem you wrote or a watercolor drawing or a sketch, like the sky's the limit, but, make sure it shows creativity. So I think a performance art, as like theater, may not be the best digital portfolio for architecture. But maybe if you worked prop design for that theater, that might be a good thing to submit for portfolio. So hopefully you see the difference there. Anything to add, Bailey?
No, just speaking on the Dean's Honor, that is, yeah, as Tiffany was saying, that's one of two of our full tuition scholarships. So that is a totally separate application that would be due on December 5th. But anything related to that will also go through your GreenWave portal. So once you apply, we give you your own login to a GreenWave portal, and that's where you can see everything related to your application, if your application is complete, if you're applying for the Dean's Honor. And that is also where you'll upload your portfolio, and you definitely have capabilities to upload video in there.
Great. And then another question for you, Tiffany, is will submitting poor or undeveloped portfolio to Tulane diminish your chances of getting in?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It only helps you. That's a great question. I forgot to say that. It can only help you.
Yeah. Another question is mechanical physics and calculus compulsory for architectural program?
Not compulsory in our program. It is in some. We have a physics for architects course that is a required course in your second year of matriculating in the architecture curriculum, but you can place out of that. Some people place out of that if they've had AP physics or calculus. I have to look that up. Always good, but not required.
Yes, let's see some other one. Okay, great. That
I see them. I see more questions. Do you see more questions?
I'm going to answer them separately. I'm looking for the answers that generally hit all aspects of it, but those are pretty good. Tiffany, any last minute tips, tricks, or anything to add about the architectural program before we let you go?
No, I think everyone should apply. Tulane has a free application. Is that still true, Bailey? Yeah, it's an endowment that we cover tuition costs, so it doesn't hurt to apply. And I look forward to seeing you next fall.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you for that presentation.
You're welcome.
All right, everybody. I imagine applause. They're all clapping for you. All right. Well, we're going to move forward in our programming. We're going to move forward in our programming. Next up, we have a student panel. We have a couple of our students here. And we're going to answer, they're going to answer your questions. So please keep using the Q&A chat function. So what I'm going to ask our students to do is to unmute themselves and put their video on so we can talk to them. All right. Hey, y'all. These are our students. I'm going to ask that they introduce themselves, tell you where they are in their program, and a little bit about themselves. And just for our student panels to know, let's try and keep our answers maximum 90 seconds, okay? All right, so Charlotte, why don't you start us off?
Hi guys, I'm Charlotte. I am in my last semester of the architecture program. So technically I'm a 5th year, but I didn't quite do the 5-year program. I double majored with another major. So I did the 4-year program. But I'm in my last semester, so I'm taking Option Studio right now. And I'm excited to talk to you guys today.
Zach?
Hi, my name is Zach. I'm a 5th year in the Bachelor of Architecture. I came to Tulane from the ancestral lands of the Duwamish people, also known as Seattle. And I'm in my 5th semester as a TA for first year, along with Charlotte. So we're happy to answer your questions on that. So.
Hey, my name's Ethan. I'm a 4th-year student going in the 5-year B-Arch program and then the Bachelor of Science in Real Estate program.
You're muted, Michael.
I clicked it. Awesome, everybody. So I think what's great now too, the question that probably most students are asking is, how did you choose Tulane and why did you choose architecture? So you can take, a couple minutes if you want to answer those questions. Those are big ones.
Yeah, so I came to Tulane knowing that I wanted to study architecture. I also hadn't really studied it before, so I knew there was a chance I'd come in and completely hate it. So I wanted the option to study something else rather quickly. And coming to Tulane, I figured, I could have had an entirely new schedule on day 2 if that turned out to be necessary. Obviously, fortunately, it didn't. I think I was really drawn to Tulane for the kind of connections built after Hurricane Katrina to the city of New Orleans, especially to the Small Center, which is our kind of community outreach center where we do design build works with community partners, kind of like nonprofits, like schools. We're working with the farm right now, some artist groups, things like that. That's also kind of what's kept me to stay. Is there's just a lot of just rotating opportunities through there that allow you to kind of put into practice things that you're doing in the classroom with actual like people in the community, doing kind of like pro bono design work as well. So it's really a way to increase your impact while you're still a student.
I'd really just found that Tulane checked a lot of my boxes. I came here undecided, so I wasn't sure that I was going to study architecture. I kind of maybe was considering it. So freshman year, I took some of the elective courses in architecture just to kind of get a feel for it before I took studio. And after taking those classes, I could tell that the school had such a strong community that I really wanted to be a part of. And obviously, I was also intrigued by the actual academics of it too. So then my sophomore year, I started taking studio, and I've been taking it ever since.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of along the same lines. I knew I wanted to be an architect.
Oh no, internet connectivity issues. Ethan, are you there? We'll let him answer his question when he gets back. One of the questions that was presented to us is, what is the most difficult part of the program? I'm going to flip that on to be double. So what is the best part of the program and what is the most difficult part of the program? And Charlotte, why don't you start us off?
Should I do best or most difficult first?
Whichever your heart desires.
Okay. I think the most difficult is probably just the adjustment to the course load and the type of coursework that you'll be doing. I know for me, I hadn't really done much like studio type work. Like I hadn't really taken even very many art classes in high school. So it was an adjustment for me. And also definitely like time management, learning like I'm doing my work in studio. Like I'm not like doing it at my house or my dorm room or something like that. But then along with that, I think the best part for my experience was spending all of that time in the school and with my colleagues and really getting to know them and being a part of the really strong in the architecture school.
Yeah, I think along similar lines, for me, the most challenging part just boils down to time management, because in a studio course, you're kind of creating artwork and it's, really well researched and, it's a lot of it is just like artwork. And with that kind of means that you decide when you're done. So, you could spend a ton of time on it, but then you won't have time for your other classes or something like that. So it's kind of this balance of like, what is something that I can be proud of while still maintaining time for both myself and my other commitments. I think just for me, the best part has kind of been my experiences with just various faculty. I've always felt just really supported by them. Even the ones I don't interact with much, they really make the effort to make the school more of a community. You get to know them really well during your time here. It's a pretty small school, which I think one of the benefits is you do end up being on a first name basis with most of the professors that you run into on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's great. So we've seen a lot of questions that are kind of similar in the sense of like, what do I need to do in high school, or what do I need to know before I go into the program? A lot of the things focus on like physics or math, drawing. So can you speak to those kind of skills?
Yeah, so like I said before, I didn't have that much experience with art in high school. I had taken like a civil engineering and architecture course, so I kind of had a like introduction to it, but I didn't have much of an art background. Um, which, it's definitely helpful to be really artistically inclined, but it's not at all necessary. I think it's mostly important that you come in with an open mind and you're ready to learn things. And you're kind of just ready to like dive in.
Yeah, I was kind of similar. I did a 2-week architecture camp at the University of Washington and a drawing class at North Seattle Community College. And that was the extent of my preparation, so to speak. But the curriculum, I think, does a really good job of kind of like teaching everyone the basics. Charlotte and I just wrapped that up with first year on Wednesday. So we kind of assume that everyone comes in knowing nothing. And we kind of teach you all the basics of drawing that you'll need to kind of build up that scaffolding during your time here. And that's kind of the first 3 weeks of first year. It's just like, how do you draw?
Great. Ethan, are you with us?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry. One of the joys of Zoom stuff is Wi-Fi dropping. So
Yeah. Ethan, why don't we go back to a question for you? What's the best part of the program for you, and what is the most difficult part of the program for you?
that's a great question. I'd say the best part of the program is seeing things that you've worked on get built, which is generally comes along later in your education towards your junior and senior years. But as early as your first month of school, there's a sukkah design build every year, which is a small pavilion for the Jewish Harvest Festival of Sukkot that anyone can do. And every year it gets built in the LBC Pocket Park and goes on display for about a week. And from my first year, I was able to do that right off the bat. And it was a great experience to see the drawings with the team get translated into something that we actually got to build. And then I'd say the toughest stuff is luckily behind me, but definitely it's the transition to studio life. The studio environment is not the same as the environment you've probably experienced in high school. It's much more intense. Many people kind of live, breathe, eat studio, but I can't endorse that. But it's definitely that transition to an environment where you're constantly expected to produce a pretty significant sum of work between classes. And that's just the honest truth about the way architecture school works.
Absolutely. Just want to remind everyone, if you have questions, go ahead and use the Q&A function. I'm going to switch it to more of post-graduation thought and ask you guys, what are your thoughts? What are you hoping to accomplish once you have your degree in architecture?
So I'm graduating in December, so I'm thinking a lot about this right now. I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing yet, but like I mentioned earlier, I'm a double major with environmental science. So I'm kind of hoping to be able to do something kind of with the two, like with this like sustainable design. I know there's a lot of job opportunities in that field, in like just in architecture firms, but also in like government. There's like the US Green Building Council, which does like the LEED rating system. So there's a lot of different areas that I do think an architecture degree kind of will allow you to pivot towards a lot of different careers. The most popular probably being an architect, but that's not necessarily everyone's path. I could definitely see myself, working in like a conventional architecture firm, but then at the same time, I could see myself doing something with sustainable design and not necessarily pure architecture.
I spent the summer working for the school doing our public interest design fellowship. So we were working directly with some community partners, again, providing the kind of like pro bono design services. And so I think based on that experience, I would really love to go into some kind of, community development oriented design position. So whether that's like actually designing, buildings, or if it's something like kind of more small scale, I really don't know yet. There's kind of a lot of ways that can go, but we've got the rest of this year to figure that out.
Yeah, I don't know exactly yet, but I think I want to work in a firm in New York City, kind of get my license, and then establish my own private practice and go into development as well. There's a great synergy between real estate development and architecture, and many development firms actually have architects on staff. So yeah, we'll see what it takes us.
That's great. And then going along with that, a lot of students are asking about what it's like to pursue licensure. So is that something that every student studying architecture does, or is that something that is really, if you choose that route, and maybe what you can do if you don't get licensed, or what you do when you get licensed? That's a lot, sorry.
I think that's a good question. I'd say for the Bachelor of Science in Architecture, maybe it's around half of people get a license. For the Bachelor of Architecture, the 5-year program, it's probably closer to 2/3, maybe even a little higher. But 100%, people go into all sorts of fields. And one of the great professors in the school, Scott Bernard, likes to always say, an architect has the training to be an interior designer, a landscape architect, an industrial designer, an artist, a graphic designer, but none of those people can call themselves an architect. So you really have an all-encompassing education that's to a very high standard.
I would just add there is like a legal distinction in that by being licensed, like that enables you to legally call yourself an architect. So, when Charlotte and I graduate, like we're not going to be able to say that. So that's just something to keep in mind. And that means you can kind of sign your own drawings and kind of assume legal responsibility for them. So that is kind of that extra step, that it is kind of the professional level, and that you're the mark of you're entering the profession.
Great. I'm going to shift you back to when you were applying to Tulane and ask you, what did you submit a design portfolio? And if so, what did it look like?
I applied undecided to Tulane, so I did not submit a portfolio. I don't even think I knew about submitting one because I was completely unsure what I was going to study. So no, I did not.
I did. I think it was just a mix of, some kind of basic models and just a bunch of kind of like drawings, a mix of like ink and charcoal and things like that. Looking back on it, it was really bad. So I think what Tiffany said earlier about it could never hurt you. That was probably in my case, but it was just pretty simple. I think, I don't know if they still use Slideroom, but it's just you kind of upload images to this online repository. It works pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I also submitted a portfolio.
What did it look like, Ethan?
I had been a AP Art student, so it was mostly just my AP Art portfolio over again. But definitely, Tiffany's totally right. The presentation makes all the difference. You can have a great work of art in terrible lighting, and it won't even get picked up over what could be 2 lines, like a Sharpie marker and a pen making 2 lines on a perfect white sheet of paper. Professors love that stuff. So presentation is everything. And that goes in life as well.
Great. Bailey, there's a lot of questions about the technical side of submitting a portfolio. Could you just address that while we're talking about it?
Yeah, for sure. So here is what it will look like when you apply, right? You will fill out the Common App or the Tulane app. We don't care which one. We have no preference. Now, once you submit the Common App or the Tulane app, admission will give you access to what's called the GreenWave portal. And you can go on the GreenWave portal and check your application status, That's where you'll get any updates regarding your admission and anything related to admission. So basically, the first step is completing your application and turning it in. Once you get access to that Greenwave portal, that's where you will submit a portfolio. So the portfolio won't be submitted with your Common App or with your Tulane app. It'll happen after. And I've seen some questions about when is the portfolio due, that sort of thing. We recommend that you submit your portfolio as soon as you have access to that Greenwave portal and as soon as your application is submitted, because what we don't want to happen is we don't want you to apply early action, let's say, right? You turn in your application by November 15th, you're all done, and then you decide to submit a portfolio in early December. By that time, we've probably already looked at your application, so we won't see your portfolio with your application, which is why we recommend turning it in as soon as you can. That way we can make sure that it will be read with your application. If you wait too late, we might never see your portfolio, right? So there's no hard deadline for the portfolio because, again, it's purely supplemental and it can't hurt your application in any way. But we do suggest submitting it once you have Greenwave portal access.
Great, thank you. Awesome. Question to our students. So is it possible to double major or to pursue a minor with the architecture degree?
Yes, I would say definitely. It definitely requires some planning ahead to kind of map out when you'll be taking all of your classes. And I also think it depends what degree you're pairing it with. There's a lot of students in the school that are also studying real estate or studio art. And I think those degrees work really well with the architecture degree. I'm studying environmental science, and I definitely had some challenges kind of just getting all of my classes to line up because they are both fairly small degrees. So like the classes are offered only at certain times, but I would say definitely, yeah. If you want to double major, you should definitely try it out. You could minor in something too. So I think it just comes down to like being able to plan ahead and kind of map out when you'll be taking which classes.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I also have a double major, but as Charlotte mentioned, I'm in real estate, so it's a little easier for me. Since it's in the same school, you have the same core requirements satisfied in both programs from the same classes. So I've only had to take about an extra 30 credits to add the second major on. So definitely there's places for both. I would say that the 5-year degree is a lot harder to do the second major outside of the school, just because you're in studio every semester in the 5-year program. So that can be pretty onerous.
Just curious, what's the wildest double major pairing you've seen with an architecture degree?
I remember being in studio with someone my sophomore year who was also studying psychology. So that was pretty different. I forgot to mention earlier, my other major is in the School of Science and Engineering. So that's kind of what Ethan was explaining. It's not in the same school at Tulane. So there are some different requirements.
Great. Now, one thing I hear a lot from students is, if I'm an architecture major, will I be able to have a life outside of the studio? Can y'all speak to maybe what you do outside of architecture at Tulane or abroad or in the city?
Yeah, so I also work for campus health and do kind of like public health outreach, kind of like just programming and workshops and stuff, which brings me a lot of joy, and it's also something I've done since my first year. And it's just, working on like time management skills is kind of what it comes down to. Is just like planning out like what do I need to do when, and like how much time can I afford for this, and then if I need more time than that, like how do I kind of come up with the flux for that? And there's always times in the year where like one thing is going to take precedence over the other, and it just happens. And I think professors are pretty understanding. Like sometimes you show up to class and you don't have as much as maybe you'd like, and they'll work with you, and it's just as long as it doesn't become a pattern, like they understand what happens.
I've been involved in the School of Science and Engineering, as well as the School of Architecture. So I was in like Women in Science, and I had a brief internship at the Office of Sustainability. But I've also found that there's also a lot of opportunities in the architecture school to get involved. So like the architecture frat APX is one. The architecture student government is a great thing to be involved in. Ethan's our school president. So I think, yeah, there's lots of opportunities to get involved both in and outside the school. And I think what Zach was saying, it's kind of like you just have to set your priorities, and sometimes like you'll have to shift things around if one has to take precedence over the other based on your schedule, but there's definitely room for a lot of different involvements.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm a poor example, perhaps, of life outside of architecture school, just because I'm so involved with things in the architecture school. But the majority of my friends are not architecture students. I don't even live with an architecture student. So like you can get out there and meet people through other activities for sure. And don't let the talk of like all-nighters scare you. I'm sure if you've been on any admissions tours, people have joked about like, oh, that's where you sleep. But I haven't had to pull an all-nighter since sophomore year. And the only reason why I had to pull one in the first place is because I chose to do, activities. And then I was like, it's okay, I'll just make up for it overnight. So it's all about the work-life balance and what's best suited for your schedule. But there's no reason you'll have to be trapped there 24/7. You can have a weekend. I take Saturdays off, don't normally even like go on the computer, and it's not an issue.
Great, great. A big theme of time management coming from our students here. So that's very helpful. We're not getting many questions. So if you have any questions you want to submit, go ahead and submit them. But I think we can kind of come towards an end and just say, like, what is your advice to someone who's applying to Tulane and applying to architecture? What pearls of wisdom do you have for these students? Yeah, take a second.
I think across both questions for Tulane and architecture, it's really just about like saying yes to a lot of different things. I found that to be really helpful freshman year, whether it was like people I was meeting or clubs I maybe wanted to join or classes I thought would be interesting. It was kind of just about giving everything a chance and keeping an open mind. And when that comes to architecture, it was kind of a bit like a little bit different, but still just like being really open to like learning new things and trying things that I'd never tried before. So yeah, I think I would say just keep an open mind about everything that's gonna hit you in the first semester of class.
I think so. The first thing I'd say is just be open to taking risks. So I was like really concerned about like making this decision where I'm going to be in this place for the next 4 years, but like, that's not necessarily the case. Like if you come here and you don't like it, like you could leave. Transferring is always an option. And same thing, like you go to another place and you're like, maybe this isn't ideal. Like maybe you come back here. Like just know that it's not the final decision. And I think the option that puts you further out of your comfort zone might be the best for long-term growth, even if it doesn't work out immediately. The second thing is I want to share the worst advice I got before coming to college, which is that it doesn't matter what city you're in because you're never going to leave campus, and that is absolutely not true. I think the city you're in is so important because that kind of determines like what it is you're going to be doing outside of school, like what's going on around you, and just kind of the cultural milieu that you're in. And I'm so glad that I ended up in New Orleans and have had these, 4.5, almost 5 years here to kind of just explore a new place and kind of understand new culture. And there's just so much that happens in the city that's really rich, and you can, engage with it as much or as little as you'd like. But it's this incredible wealth of opportunities, and I hope wherever you end up, you find a similar location.
Yeah, that segues great into what I was going to say, which is get out there. There's so much more to the city than Uptown and even the French Quarter, and you'll be amazed what you can find off campus as well that will also enrich your architectural education. And also time management for real. Use the Outlook calendar. You'll never regret it. And that's the key to having a good work-life balance, which I really do stress. No one to say yes, but also no one's saying things, and to say, is it, does this assignment need to be perfect, or do I need to go out for the third time this weekend? So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to our student panelists. That was really great advice, and I think you helped our students out a lot. So you guys, thank you, and you can leave right now. We're just going to talk to our students about some admission stuff. Bye, y'all.
Adios.
All righty. Bailey, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so now's the time. If you have any last minute questions about admission, about architecture, we're going to sit here and answer any questions that you have. I see we have some in the chat. We keep getting a couple questions about the Dean's Honor Scholarship. But first, I want to just start by explaining real quick the application process, just so y'all have that before we go into anything else, right? So as I said, Tulane will take the Common App or the Tulane app. We have no preference. We have 3 rounds that you can apply to Tulane. The first is going to be early decision, which is our early binding option. So you sign a contract saying, if admitted, I will attend Tulane. That is due November 1st. Our second option is early action, which is our early non-binding option. That's due November 15th. You're not obligated to come if you're admitted. And finally, we have regular decision, which is due January 15th. Piece of advice to all of you who are in attendance: do not apply regular decision, okay? It is our most competitive round. So if you want the best chance of getting into Tulane, then your best options are either early decision or early action, and both are great options. Now, when you apply, we do holistic review. So we're taking a look at everything that you've given us, okay? Your academics, extracurriculars, your essays, guidance counselor letter of recommendation, and your demonstrated interest. The portfolio, as we've been emphasizing throughout this whole event, is totally optional, and it can never hurt you. It can only help you. Okay, so your main admittance is going to be based on your regular application, just like any other Tulane student, regardless of their major or regardless of their interests. Once you submit your application, if you apply early, and only if you apply early, then you can apply for a full tuition scholarships, okay? If you apply regular decision, you cannot apply for a full tuition scholarship. The first is the Paul Tulane, which is an essay-based scholarship. So we give you 5 prompts to choose from, and you choose 2 to answer. And the second that we've been discussing a lot today is the Dean's Honor Scholarship. It is a project-based award. So you would do some sort of creative project. In the past, we've had people who have created whole comic books. We've had people who have done some woodworking and sent in an item physically to our office. We've had people who have done big service projects in their hometown, and they create a video or a vlog on it, and they send that in, right? And then you do some sort of written portion explaining your work. That's the Dean's Honor Scholarship. Those are due December 5th. So again, hence why you have to apply early in order to apply for these. But that is what you're looking at. And then you would hear back probably sometime in the early spring, whether you received a full tuition scholarship. Now, we do have some other more specialized scholarships that are available to you. The Community Service Fellowship, there's a musicianship award, but obviously the most important to y'all is going to be the Architecture Portfolio Award. And that is based on your portfolio and also an interview that we will do with you in the spring. The Architecture Portfolio Award is worth up to $10,000. It's a one-time award. So that means it would be applied to your first semester at Tulane. It's not one that you get every single year, but definitely would be beneficial to you as an architecture student. So that is pretty much, I think I've answered any questions that came up about the Dean's Honor Scholarship. So Michael, I don't know if there's a question in there that you want to take somewhere, or if you want me
Yeah,
to.
I can talk about 2 questions that I see. So first, about another chance for an open house for architecture. There won't be another chance for applicants. We will have an admitted student open house in the spring. So our face-to-face open house is next weekend, but it's all the same information. So if you came to this one, you're good, you've gotten it. But we always encourage you to come visit campus when you can. Do you need to have a high GPA to be certified for an architecture program? I mean, to get into the program, you're going to need to meet the academic requirements of the school of Tulane. To get the license, I believe that GPA is about a 3.0 to be a licensed architect. So it's just something to keep in mind there. Bailey, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, and again with admission, we're never admitting you into a specific school or major, right? So even if you apply, let's say you apply as a neuroscience major, right? You're interested in architecture, so I don't know why you would apply as a neuroscience major, but let's say you do. You are never obligated to do that major. You could show up to Tulane as a neuroscience major on day 1, and day 2, you're like, actually, I want to be an architect, so I'm going to switch into architecture. So therefore, like Michael was saying, you just have to meet the general requirements to get into Tulane. We don't have a GPA minimum or a test score minimum. So apply with whatever you've got. And again, it's totally free to apply. Let's see. So there's a question, does applying early decision increase your likelihood and quantity of financial aid when compared to early action? So applying ED or EA, nothing hurts your financial aid. Now, financial aid is going to be your need-based aid, right? So that's what you need in order to attend. That's going to be FAFSA, the CSS profile, and that all goes through the Office of Financial Aid. However, through the Office of Admission, there is something called merit aid. Merit aid is different from financial aid. It's not based on your financial needs. It's based on your academics purely. We have a different pool of merit aid for early decision applicants versus early action applicants. So yes, if you apply early decision, your merit aid could be impacted. When you're admitted to Tulane, you would find out in your admittance letter if you received any merit. Typically, it's not that our ED students do not receive merit, because students who apply ED can still receive merit scholarships, but they tend to be smaller merit scholarships than if you would have applied early action. So my piece of advice always is apply ED if you are 110% sure Tulane is the school for you, and if it is a financially viable option for you and your family or whoever is paying for college, right? Tulane has a high price tag and we know that. So if it is any sort of financial burden, I would suggest applying early action rather than early decision.
Great, and I'll go ahead and answer the 2 questions we have in the chat, and then I'll have Bailey answer a question about SAT or ACT, whether we should submit those. Okay, so our foreign programs, our study abroad programs, if you're in the 5-year Bachelor of Architecture degree, we usually, that is set for your 4th year in your fall semester. In all other degrees in the School of Architecture, we say the sophomore or junior year. You can take some study abroad opportunities. And then the question is, do you pay individually for materials, or does Tulane Architecture supply those materials? You pay for the materials in your fees when you apply it to Tulane, when you pay for your fee bill. So you're paying for them, but there's a lot of instruments and tools that we provide in the School of Architecture. And then Bailey, why don't you answer our optional ACT, SAT question?
Yeah, so this applies to any of you who are seniors who are applying this year. If you're a junior or sophomore, sit tight. We're not sure if we're going to be test optional yet, but for this upcoming year, we are test optional. So that means whether or not you submit a test score, you'll still be considered for admission, you will still be considered for merit scholarship, and you will still be considered for the honors program. So there is absolutely no penalty for applying without a test score. We want you to know that first and foremost. Now, our middle 50% for the ACT tends to fall between a 31 or a 32 up to a 34. And for the SAT, it's typically between a 1420 and a 1520. So my general piece of advice is if you fall within that range, you know, a 31 plus on the ACT or a 1410, 1420 plus on the SAT, then I would say definitely submit your score because it falls right within our range. Now, it's not that we don't admit students with scores lower than that, but at that point, the test score is not going to be the shining star of your application, right? So if you have a score that's a little bit lower, that's totally okay, but you can keep that off of your application and let us focus on the parts of your application like your GPA, your activities list, your essays. Let us focus on those part of the application that are really strong and that are really going to make you stand out as an applicant.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. We're going to go ahead and conclude our architecture preview day there. If you have any questions for us, feel free to email us. I'm going to go ahead and put my email address in the chat so that you have it. And I'll ask Bailey to do the same. So if you have any questions later on, feel free to email us. We'll be happy to answer it. If you haven't visited campus yet, we strongly encourage you to visit campus and come see us in New Orleans. That's always a great time. But with that, yes, thank you for coming, and we hope y'all have a great day. Bye, y'all.